Hello everyone, my name is Mirna and on behalf of the Mindalia TV team, welcome to Mindalia live streaming, where thousands of people around the world gather to see the lectures and interviews organized by Mindalia TV. Today with us, Angel Rebo, CEO consultant, TV host, international public speaker, and president of the Wisdom for Kids Foundation, along with our dear Judy Hoberman. Judy is president of the Walking on a Glass Floor and Selling in a Skirt. She is an international speaker, trainer, executive coach, author, and radio show host. They are going to be bringing a very special guest, Mr. Don Taylor. Before starting with them, we want to remind you that Mindalia's mission is to share information that can help raise the level of consciousness around the world, and you can help us by subscribing to our channel, leaving us a positive comment down this video, or sharing it with someone that you know that is going to benefit of the content that we're going to be talking here today. Also, while we are live streaming, like right now, we have the active chat. Is the screen that you're going to be seeing here on my side or down this screen in case that you are from a smartphone. And through there, you can interact with us. You can enter your questions. We just please ask you to follow the format, word question in caps and the actual question. Last but not least, Mindalia is broadcasting daily in Portuguese through Mindalia Televisão, Spanish, Mindalia Televisión, and English, Mindalia TV English, as you already know. We want you to go and join our different channels and to find out what we're developing there daily, information as beautiful and as interesting as the one that you see on Mindalia TV. We also want you to collaborate with us with your own valuable content. And for that, you can go to our website. On the top, you're going to find a link. It says Collaborate with Mindalia. That link is going to take you to a form, and that will allow our technical team to get in contact with you. So you could be sharing your own valuable information through the different platforms of Mindalia. English, Portuguese, or Spanish are the languages that you can use. I'm not going to be delaying this any further, and I will leave you with Angel, Judy, and Mr. Don Taylor. Guys, welcome to Mindalia live streaming. The screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Mirna, for the introduction, and thank you very much, and welcome again to Mindalia TV. Judy, excuse me, I was just looking at your microphone to make sure that we were all on now. And in a few seconds, we're going to interview our guest star today, which is Don Taylor. So, Judy, how are you today?
I am great, Angel. How are you?
I am super excited today. I am surrounded by a lot of light, a lot of sun, a lot of nice weather, a lot of cold, which keeps us really, really young. and
you're surrounded by us.
Exactly. And I'm surrounded by a lot of stars today. I was looking at your outfits, and actually I saw stars on our guest star tie, and I saw stars on his mug, and I saw stars on your outfit. Judy, oh my God. There's so much shining and glowing today.
I'm just blingy today. That's all. Just blingy. So you're ready to hear about our guest?
Absolutely. Please introduce us to him.
So Don Taylor, he's a director at UT Southwestern. He helps in their integration team. He has a million years, which is really like 30 or 40, in healthcare. He's one of the big brains. So when he has a conversation with you, just be careful because there's a whiteboard coming out somewhere because he's very strategic. He's also the love of my life. He happens to be my husband. So we have the Colonel and we have the Skirt. And I'm really excited to have him on the show today. So, hey, Don.
Hey there. How are you today? I'm good.
Good.
Hi, Don. Hi, Don. Don't pretend you didn't see Judy today. Come on.
Oh, yeah.
We get to see each other for 13 minutes in the morning. That's about it.
Okay.
That's
13 minutes. That's precise. Well, anyway, thank you for both of you for allowing me to, to start kidding and joking about you. But obviously, I mean, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here. I love you both. And I am impressed and I admire both of you for what you do in the world every single day. And welcome to Mindalia TV, Don. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. And it's not very common that we have, there's many different things that make Don, our guest today, special, which is that he works in an environment that we typically don't have anybody, which is fun, which is, not fun, which is curious. It's curious that we typically don't have people that actually work in the, let's say in the academic world, number one. But I love listening to every single story and business case that he makes when I am around him. Mm-hmm. So he's really, really a wise source of wisdom for everybody. And he actually works again. He brings those two different edges on this conversation about women and equality to the world. One which is the academic world, and the other one which is the health world.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to start our conversation asking you about what in your career in the health sector, in the health industry, how have you perceived that the women have been treated?
Okay, that's a great question, because I've been in healthcare since, almost 40 years, and I've seen significant transformation during that period of time. Not only in the opportunities for women and other of the diverse, where I would say a more inclusive opportunity or organization, but I've seen the specific transformation change. Number one, when I first started in healthcare, it was primarily very physician dominated, mostly male, and the workforce though happened to be predominantly female, those that delivered care. In my field, particularly in administration and support and infrastructure and such, it was also very male dominated. Then I began to see change happen, and probably through the 80s and early 90s, where more females entered the space in academics. And we're seeing that change radically now, even as physicians in training. More and more females entering the space in other than nursing, in fields other than nursing, in fields other than support, or in fields other than executive administration or secretarial support. We're starting to see now more females educated and prepared then to move into what I call the hardcore elements of healthcare, that being in logistics and support and infrastructure, information technology, IT, huge growth there, and more females are in that space. But I'm seeing significant change in physicians, with female physicians, their opportunities, and then starting to see emerging roles in executive leadership. That had not been the case, except for the HR universe. It had been, they were in HR, but they hadn't moved into the others, and that's changing as well.
So Don, let me ask you a question. Do you think, what do you think that women bring to the table that is different than what has always been perceived as a male-dominated industry? What are women bringing that makes it so transformational and makes it so important that we continue this, this path, this journey?
Well, healthcare in itself is a people business.
Mm-hmm.
It's about connection with patients, connection with families, sort of an empathetic connection to individuals. Women tend to do that naturally, particularly those who have been educated maybe in a clinical field such as nursing earlier in their career, then transform that into management. They bring a different perspective. They bring a nice blend of clinical compassion and the business savvy in the executive roles. That is very positive. The other part is I have seen them in those that I particularly have mentored over the years. They just seem to be more hungry. They seem to be more focused. They seem to grasp more details. They seem to be more attentive to the work at hand than some of the younger males. And I don't know why. It was just my experience with those that I worked with, and those that I've mentored over the years.
So talk about mentoring. Sorry, Angel.
No, sure. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, talk about mentoring, because one of the big things, and Angel and I have talked about this on a number of our shows about how important mentoring is. And a lot of times there aren't females at the level yet to mentor. So they have to rely on the men, and the men have lots of experience, but we're not seeing, as much mentoring as we'd like to see. So how do you open that up? And what is it that they ask you for? Because I know you mentor a lot of women, whether it was in the the Air Force or in healthcare. What are they asking you for?
Well, first of all, they ask, first and foremost, they ask for a safe place to talk and openly discuss issues. That's the first thing. And frankly, that doesn't really vary by men or women. There seems to be an absence of what I call a safe environment with which people can just ask and be themselves. Trust is at a somewhat low right now, I believe, in the corporate space. and I will say in particular healthcare. As money begins to influence agendas and people and decisions, trust begins to get low because power and money then become part of it. It's a big business. Unfortunately, healthcare is a big business. So they first want a safe place by which they can ask difficult questions. They can ask sometimes in their mind stupid questions, but that's okay, nothing stupid, because nobody's ever walked the same path. So they look for a safe place, number one. The other one is they want a place by which they aren't threatened or they don't feel uncomfortable. So as a male, I have to be, you have to be very careful of that. Even every female I have mentored, I've always had either a third party there or I've had some way with which it can never be perceived wrong, or there's a safe place for them to never feel cornered or threatened as well. Likewise for me. I've had friends who were, quote, challenged in some of those environments, and it ended up being very, very difficult. So that's the number one, is a truly safe place to discuss. The other part is they really want unconstrained feedback on their performance, and they want it to be not gender specific. They really want to know how they can compete on an equal scale with the men in the same workspace. And sometimes they have to rewire the way they think about things, because we really need to make sure that they understand the path and the steps to get to the next stages. Now, the challenge has always been, at least those that I have mentored over years during their career path, they really face difficult decisions, usually in their mid to late 30s and early 40s, because they always were challenged with family. Mm. The men never seem to have that same sort of speed bump in that career path. The women always felt they had to choose one or the other, unless they had a spouse who could handle that. And rarely did that happen, because most of the ones I mentored they were dual careers with the husband and wife. And then those who were single still felt the challenge there, because they felt life was passing them by if they hadn't connected in that same time period between mid-30s and early 40s.
What would you say? Obviously, I'm sure you've had tough conversations with your mentee. Mentees would be the right word to use. Mm-hmm. So what would you say? Because safety means that people obviously, they're afraid of something. There's something that scares them. That's why they're looking for someone to trust, and there's someone that's going to give them this unbiased, genuine feedback. What would you say were the sources of maybe this fear of this woman at the workplace that you've been able to help?
There's many things. First, fear of being perceived as ill-prepared or not informed. A lot of them felt they didn't want to be perceived as not smart enough or not enough of this and not enough of that. And so, whereas guys will just ask a dumb question, laugh it off, the young ladies just wouldn't do that. They were always guarded about it, perceiving to be less informed or less able to do a job. And they're afraid any moment that they revealed that, they were weakened. Mm-hmm. There's no somewhat forgiveness in the space. So I was very careful about, sharing my own stories. I'm always good about sharing stories, but my own dumb stuff, sometimes they let their guard down when they know you did the same things, or you asked dumb things, or you didn't know stuff. Goodness knows, we still don't know things. And that has to be shared, and you have to be as vulnerable as they are at that moment, because they have to know that there's somebody who is in the same shoe, and they can't see that. They said in there now, and females today, if I were mentoring females today, they would have to know I'm equally as vulnerable in some spaces, or equally as insecure in some spaces as they are.
Mm-hmm. So here's a question. I know a lot of times, especially female physicians, female executives, they don't believe that some of their natural qualities are really leadership qualities. They're, like I was a moderator on a panel with a physician, and when I asked about mentoring and generosity, she said that I don't know anything about that. I know about my craft. I know about what I needed to get through medical school and everything else. So she was very focused to make sure that she had all the hard skills. But the soft skills, the people skills are equally as important, in many cases more important. So are you seeing that women are finally being able to own what they have, inherently, or are they still trying to, for lack of a better term, be one of the boys?
I don't see it emerging now. I still don't. I don't see it in medicine yet. It depends particularly upon the career path you're on. You'll have to think back, many years ago, I supervised I had a young, very, very bright urologist on my staff. And when I was starting to ask him to do things outside of the clinic, he was very uncomfortable. And one day he just come to me and he goes, "You have to understand, I'm kind of a social moron." He said, "I have focused for so long on my skills. We didn't have time to learn how to deal with people." And that's sort of doubly true for the women in the same space, because the competition and the pressure to succeed as a physician in this space is that's paramount to everything. That supersedes everything else. You are expected to heal, and to do that you have to be technically proficient and you have to be technically aware. And it's a, lack of a better word, a science. It is an art, but it becomes a science.
Mm-hmm.
The skills about interaction with humans and people aren't learned until later in life, but it's through many, many bumps. The women tend to learn that earlier than the men do. That's my observation. And so nursing is the same curriculum, same path. Nursing is all about support and caring, but it's against a checklist process. It's not really a compassionate process. It is, but it isn't yet, because the competition is so fierce in the workplace. And remember, through all of this, healthcare isn't free. There is a business behind it that has a lot of pressures on performance and outcomes and achievements and revenue, and that complicates just this unique organization of healthcare.
I understand that you had to be extremely cautious when you were, mentoring women, when they were coming to you and they had these fears and they wanted to be in a safe place. Given your experience, what do you think was the most effective way to handle with that human personal need of finding a safe place? What do you think was the most useful thing that you said that you were doing with them?
Well, first of all, it just didn't happen quickly. You built relationships over time. You built relationships. You built a trust. You built a dialogue. That takes time. It is also about your demeanor and the way you're perceived in a public space. Nobody ever saw me getting too friendly outside of my role. I was close, but there was always distance. It was respectful distance, and I was perceived to have respectful distance, and that is essential, especially in leadership roles. And then later in life, and I'll tell you, and Judy, I'm going to bring this up too. Now, when I talk to women, what diffuses a threat is when I talk about Judy. That diffuses the threat.
Can you elaborate on that just a little?
Well, no, because they see I have a healthy relationship with you and what you stand for. Therefore, they feel very comfortable talking to me about the same issues. That was not the case before I met Judy.
Mm-hmm.
That was not the case. That has allowed sort of another dialogue and allowed safe relationships, I think, to occur in a different way. Because through that, they see me as kind of an advocate or a champion.
But you are the one, though, just so you know. Go ahead, Angel.
Exactly.
I know you are an advocate and a champion for women.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaking of what, and sorry that I'm asking another question now, but speaking of what, I know that you have been extremely, extremely, extremely important in the inception of Walking on the Glass Floor initiative. So I would like to ask you, because we haven't had the chance to speak with you and to have this perspective, so that, I would like you to share with everybody, what that represents, not only in your life, but how that originated and what that represents in Judy's life. Dawn.
To me, it represents her finally realizing her calling. That's really what it is to me. I think she was excellent in the, well, first of all, Judy's going to be good at whatever she tries. That's number one. That's a given. And in the sales business, I think she was good in sales training. She was excellent. I just never thought that was a complete fulfillment of what she could do. I think as you watch her and you watch her amongst other women, they migrate to her. There's something about her presence that they aspire to. Well, so when we first talked about this, it was, well, how do we capture that? What does that mean? And of course, she dismisses it if she's listening. Yeah, she dismisses that. But I see it, and I've seen it it's sort of like you see it, you don't know how to define it, you just don't know how to bottle it either. And I believe that Walking on the Glass Floor is the beginning of capturing that. It's just the beginning, though. I really do. It's just the beginning. It was her own values, her own beliefs, her own thoughts expressed through years of her monologues with radio, which are all right from the heart. And that was then taken and kind of refocused into the bundle of leadership in the book. Now, that has become training, has become a program, it's become a movement that we want to achieve. All based upon the aspiration of finding that magic that other women perceive with Judy. That's really what it's about.
Imagine, let's go back a few years and let's think about those conversations that you had with, those ladies that you mentored and others in your career. What would have happened to that particular organization had they received already the kind of, let's say, training and coaching that Walking on the Glass Floor brings to the table, Dawn?
I think they would have arrived with confidence, and they would have arrived with more knowledge about their their purpose, their aspirations, and what they want to do. Mostly confidence. That's it. They would have arrived in a strong state, empowered to speak and establish rules and roles. Whereas they arrived without all of that. They had to discover that through other processes and discussions. So, and I do the same because I would feel it's the same discussion I would have even with the daughters that we have, that Judy and I have together. All are going through those same periods and same struggles themselves in different ways. But they're in that same point in life: is what is their role? What is their purpose? How do they function as an effective, strong-willed, powerful female in today's world? And they are very strong young ladies.
Yeah, they are. I think that one of the things, and I was talking to somebody the other day, and she is at the height of her career. I mean, she's powerful. She is confident, but she said, there's something missing. There's something missing, and I can't put my finger on it. And, she has the career, she has the family, she has all of that, but there's still something missing. And I think that in my case, it probably was this piece of it that was missing. Because when I talk about Walking on the Glass Floor, and I talk about the training, and I talk about our trainers, and I talk about everybody else, I'm like jumping out of my seat. Whereas before I was only moving in my seat. There's a big difference, because once you find what it is, it's different, but you can't always define it. That, I think, is the problem when, we talk about purpose and passion. How do you when you're mentoring these women, how do you move back the layers so they can actually see what they're doing could or may not be the right thing? How do you get to that point with them?
Yes, and again, I want to go back to that point of fear, because I think fear determines a lot of things that happen in corporate. And I'm coming from a different industry than Don's and yours, Judy. But again, one of the wealth and wisdom of Don is that he's been in three different industries, interacting with women and perceiving and knowing and seeing what happens. Do you think, or do you see that fear can be handled probably in a better way and from a better place and perspective, thanks to this Walking on the Glass 4 initiative?
Oh, absolutely. Because the first thing they realize is they're not alone. And I would say a fearful or an environment that has psychological safety challenges, women manifest that much. It's exaggerated amongst the women more so than the men. They internalize that more. They're more disturbed by it than the men. The men can brush it off sometimes. They're a little more resilient in that space. Don't know why. It's the way they're raised. I just don't know. My perception is they're more resilient. The women really, really, really worry and develop, and it manifests itself, and then it exaggerates itself in their mind. It's usually toward a negative trend, and then it becomes destructive. So women working in a fearful space is really hard on women. And I think that that's why we're focused on this becoming a cultural change rather than individual development, but also transforming the culture. That's what we're talking about with the certification program, so that women don't have to deal with that lack of safety or that absence of safety in their workspace. And that is culturally related. The business can still be tough. It can still be hard. It can still be challenging, but it does not have to be unsafe. It does not have to be unsafe. And that we have to fix. And I think that's what we're about in moving this forward.
It's also about creating opportunities. Like, are there opportunities for women that, that a champion, an advocate, a sponsor can be aware of? And before the position even comes to fruition, they could say, hey, I know that Susie is great for this. We should really look at her. And I think that's part of the thing that we're missing, is that we have to either get men to self-identify, or we have to identify them. But we also need to find women that are champions, because a lot of times women are threatened by each other. So, that's one of the things that I believe. I know that Angel is a champion. Don, I know that you are. I know Jim is. I mean, so a lot of the men that I know, Jeffrey is, are really the ones that are supporting this. And so we have to get more men into that circle. I mean, I think it's important, especially if you're trying to get, women that need mentors, women that need champions, and they're in businesses that are all male. You have to find the men that are willing to take a chance on you, or to really advocate for your ability.
Yeah, it's interesting. The irony of all of this is that when you're dealing with the leadership of an organization, the men are more willing to go here and to change the culture. The men are more apt to do this. Some of the women right now, I think, have been the hard sell. They're the ones who well, I didn't have that help when I was there. So, and I made it. Those who achieved. And so I think we have a little bit different sales pitch that we have to do, or a promotional discussion with the women in leadership that have to change a culture than the men in leadership who have to change a culture. But I think we have to be aware of that, because what we're trying to promote here is equality. That's what we're trying to promote. And young women do not perceive they're starting on an equal footing. And that frankly, most of it's in their head. Most of it's just the way they're wired.
Angel, what do you think?
Well, number one, you mentioned your combined team of daughters. Yeah, it's one of the challenges with my daughter. She's still very young, but I think that everybody creates their own reality in the workplace, and but I mean, we have to accept it. I mean, what's the message that women get consistently from all the different places where they get their manners, their education, where they are raised? So, I mean, there's still this stigma in society in general, outside the workplace. So I'm not surprised that this is, I mean, I have seen it myself, you know, when you take it to the corporate world, I mean, there's no two different human beings. You are the same human being, but unfortunately in the workspace, you have to pretend that you're someone else most of the time to protect yourself. Again, going back to the safe space that Don was talking about before. But I wanted to ask you a question, Judy, because obviously you've been blessed with having Don in the inception of everything and related to the walking on the glass floor. So could you kind of relate the support that you have had from him to the support that you think that women could or should receive in corporate from men around them so that they are championed?
Well, the whole idea of the movement actually came from a comment that Don made to me, like kind of like off the cuff. You know, we were talking about how do you get this movement started? And he said, why don't you just sell 1 million books and be done with it? And I thought, okay, so if you really think about how many books an average author sells, blah, blah, blah. And so, you know, we went back and forth on that. But then I started thinking, like, why couldn't we do 1 million books? Why couldn't we get the books into hands of people? And so from that, the foundation was formed. Because you can't just, you know, give money anymore. You have to go through a foundation. So we have our own foundation. That's how it started. And so I'm more of the implementer and Don is the strategist. So when I say whiteboard, I am telling you, like, when we have conversations, that whiteboard is out and he's saying, okay, so if we start here, here's how you go. And so I know if I need support strategically, he's there, but he's also there emotionally, because there's a lot of times when you just sit there and you think like, okay, this is the time I have to stop because I can't even breathe anymore. Either there's too much going on or there's nothing going on. So you have the emotional support. And, you know, and then there's also the part that the experience, he's got a lot more experience in different areas that I will never have. And I have experience that he'll never have. So a lot of times, you know, we'll go back and forth and try to figure out like, how do we take the two of them and integrate it? So if you think about going into corporate, a lot of times you're looking for a mentor or somebody that you can have this conversation with. I always tell people, find somebody that has the experience you don't. They might be in the position you want, but they have different experiences, and tell them why you admire them. I admire you because you have a strategic brain and you can see things that I can't see. I would love for you to support me on that. Show me how to do that. That's what I always think. That's how you can support each other in corporate environment. Find somebody that you admire. Find a quality you admire. Find a position you admire. So, you know, being husband-wife, of course, we admire what the other one's doing, but there's things I'm never going to be able to do that he does. So I have to make sure that I have access to that because he can teach me things, but you also have to be ready to receive it. And I have to admit, I'm not always ready to receive it because I don't understand it. And if I don't understand it, I shut down. So I have to learn things, you know, in steps. And that happens in corporate as well. People just assume you get it and you don't get it. So you have to step back and say, okay, wait, I don't really understand this. How does that work? So, I mean, that to me makes sense. And Don, you're laughing because you know it's true. I don't always understand.
No, and she's mastered the word why. So the questions arrive, and so this, I could tell you, complementary doesn't always mean aligned. And so we are not the same people. We don't look at issues exactly the same way. We approach them differently. I'm okay with starting something and finishing it on my own time. She finishes it and starts it within the same hour, hopefully. Or starts and finishes. She gets things done. She completes and gets things done. I don't. One idea leads to another idea, leads to another idea. And to me, nothing's ever done. It's always this endless cycle of thought or of opportunity or strategy. And that drives her crazy. But it plays into some of the discussions that we have that become helpful in developing this. For instance, on Walking on the Glass Floor, she sees it as a practical training program. It has been a discussion to take it to another level of certification and of transformation and how it moves into culture. And that is something that, because sometimes just because of the way she's wired and her own experiences. I see it just differently, and I see it in a broader scope, and I see a much more, and I see alignment in industries. You know, besides the military, I see it in healthcare, I see it in academics, I see it in engineering. I mean, I see this fitting in the space that women are struggling right now. And so our discussions always are interesting about what's next. So we know right away that, you know, first of all, we know the program is solid. We have a great team of trainers that beginning to gel to another level where I think it's now becoming a true core group that think and align together. And it has a special bond. That's really special in this. Well, now that becomes a power that can be projected. And it can actually begin the movement to a broad base. And I think that's essential. But the next is now, how do we take that same power and infuse it into industry, into companies, into cultures, and sustain it there? Well, that's the next challenge for all of us, is how we get this to stick. Not only do they want it, but how do we get it to stick inside the organizations we're going to be dealing with?
We've talked a lot about the health sector. Would you say that what you explained before about the evolution inside the health sector also applies to the academic sector? Have you seen the same kind of initiatives or dynamics going on?
Well, first of all, academics is not, when you look at non-university academics, when you look at local schools, that's predominantly female. It's always been female. Males are the exception in K through 12 education in communities, and teachers and principals and administration. And you're seeing more and more females in the administration of local school districts. Academics at the university level is just the opposite of that. It is predominantly male, particularly in medical schools, and beginning to see a transformation of that as well. Beginning to now. A majority of medical students today are female. They've crossed the 50% threshold. So you'll see here in the next 4 to 10 years, a majority of female physicians in the workspace. If they don't leave, that's the caveat. Most of them don't stay continually providing care over their career. They leave at that late 30s, early 40s and do something else because of the demands of time and the conflicts between that and family.
Yeah, but that's not going to change, though. I mean, you're always going to have conflicts. You're always going to have conflicts. So maybe there's another pathway that can be offered. I mean, I know a lot of companies, they're doing things, you know, where they're allowing for flexibility, which is not a dirty word, you know, and a lot of companies think it's a dirty word, but flexibility simply means that they're listening to what their people want. It doesn't mean that people want to work less. They want to work in different ways. Like, I remember people, you know, you think about IT, the young IT web developers, they don't work 8 to 5. They don't do it. It doesn't work for them. They would rather work from midnight to 8, you know, or they'd rather work, you know, from 10 to 2 or whatever it is, but they get their work done. So maybe there is another direction that can be opened up for women or for men.
However, the core medicine of business really is an 8 to 5 days a week business at this moment. It is at this moment. You will soon start seeing emerging opportunities where care is taken to the home via technology. And I think you're going to see more women moving into that space because of its flexibility. And I think you're going to see more of that emerging in time. The challenge is, though, when they move to the alternate schedules, they move to more flexible schedules, it takes them out of that track for leadership. They become out of sight, out of mind, and they're not on that core traditional track for leadership development, and it creates a new challenge for them.
Throughout your career, because as you know, I'm very, you know, given my personal life and experience, I've been very, very, you know, exposed to Latin Americans, so I'm very sensitive about, you know, the 58 million Latinos that live in the U.S. Have you had any opportunity to mentor anybody in any of the industries that you have worked at, Dawn, or have you seen an evolution in the presence of Latino origin, professionals around you over time?
I'm seeing a larger number of Latinos in the workspace, particularly in the healthcare sector, a much larger number. I've seen a growing emergence for them in the nursing space, but I'm seeing so many more now in actual physicians. And here of late, I've seen more as I've spoken to some graduate classes. There's a large and growing number of Latinos in management. And I'm finding that refreshing, frankly, because they bring such a different perspective about their own development and growth, and their life experiences bring a different expectation into healthcare and the management of healthcare than mine did, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm seeing that to be a refreshing, what I call kind of a full 360 perspective on what this is about and its challenges. And those perspectives are going to be really important as we move to this next phase of national healthcare reform, is to who's in and who's out, and how we cover that, and how we deal with the Affordable Care Act and what that really means, and how we provide care. What is it a right or is it a business? There's a lot of tough decisions to come in the industry of healthcare. And I think women, and I think some of the Latinos are better prepared from life experiences to contribute to that discussion than what we've had in the past.
Mm-hmm. And Angel, I'll tell you that in financial services, there's a lot more Latino, a lot more. And it also is a lot of women as well, because as you always say that, the women are the heart of the Latino families. Well, these women that are getting into financial services are realizing that their position is to help protect families. And so that's what they're doing, and they're doing extremely well. But I do know that it was an initiative. It wasn't just women, and it wasn't just Latino. It was Latino women that the companies were looking for. So that's a big one. But there's also, there's a bigger presence in the whole industry, life and health, because it is very important, and people want to take care of their families. So yeah, there's a lot more present than there was even 5 years ago.
I was really intrigued to listen to your statement, Dawn, about the different perspective that Latinos bring to the business, to the healthcare sector business. Could you share with us maybe a few facts or a few specifics that you have seen over time that allow you to have that opinion?
Well, first of all, they have a better connection with kind of a growing marketplace, because there just are more Latinos in the country than there have been in the past, and I think they have a better perspective of market opportunity. The second part is their own personal challenges. They're usually one generation away from some tough choices, from economic challenges, are just frankly development, or are kind of settlement, or what I would say assimilation into the country, into the United States. Whereas those of us who are a little bit more established, my family's, has been in Texas for probably 4 or 5 generations. Well, my perspective on what, quote, Texas is different. And I don't have some of the same family challenges and same family, let's just say the way I think and what I look as a challenge in life, they're not the same. They're not the same. And we bring different values as well. And however that's based, it's just different values. And I think that's a healthy discussion in the current space. And I'm finding it to become more and more prevalent, because the market we serve is changing as well. The patient looks different. The patient is different. The demographics and needs of the patient is different. And their expectations are different as well. And sometimes I can't understand those expectations, either of a patient or in the workforce, or as someone else who has different experiences can. And I think that's real important.
And do you think that the principles and values behind the Walking on the Glass Floor initiative could help them actually to have a better experience in the corporate world?
I do. But what I think would be most important is to have them in a room going through the training with people who have different experiences and have that aha moment during the training. As I've said many times, I take this back to what happened to me when I did the 7 Habits with Stephen Covey in the early 90s. I walked out of that room a different person because I was forced to self-reflect. I was forced to face issues I didn't want to talk about. And I was also forced to do it in front of people that I didn't know that well. I think the training in a very culturally blended forum would be hugely valuable so that people can see perspective. They can see the challenges through different eyes. I always talk about forever. People go, "What's your leadership style?" I said, "My leadership style is seeing things through the eyes of those I lead." I used to do that in architecture too, designing buildings. Design it through the eyes of the person you're serving. I think it's important that we create opportunities for those to see things through the eyes of others. I don't know how we do it, but this is the beginning of that. This is the beginning of us teaching each other how to see things through the eyes of others.
Well, you remember that when we did the training for all the trainers, how different everybody was at the end of the training, because they all started to see things about themselves that they weren't sure, they weren't ready to admit, but all of a sudden, people came up with some things that they thought, this is very powerful. This is really more than I thought it was going to be. And I think that, imagine doing what you just said, having different cultures in that. It's also diversity of thought. And that's what this is all about as well. It's not just let's get more women in leadership, let's find the men that champion, let's redefine culture. That's all great, but you have to have diversity of thought, because if everybody in the room is the same person, then you're not going anywhere. You have to have some kind of other factor in there.
Yeah, one of the other things that I don't know that we've really discussed, but it's something we should, is that core group that goes to the training together will have a special bond. They'll have a cohort in a relationship that will probably last and should be nurtured and developed over time. And it's not just anybody that's gone through the training. It's those you went through the training with you. Mm-hmm. It's those of which you've shared your stories. It's those of which you've had emotional response to things. I don't know that we've really talked about, but that's going to be a special cohort that we have to maybe develop and protect over time.
Absolutely. We have to start wrapping it up. So I wanted to say thank you. But first, Dawn, how can we find you online? How can people that would like to reach out to you and know more about your experiences, your career, your amazing, stories that I mentioned in the beginning of the conversation?
You can reach me through walkingontheglassfloor.com. I'm there as a certified trainer. You can also reach me on my Gmail account at DonTaylorTX. That's like Texas, DonTaylorTX@gmail.com.
And they can find you on LinkedIn.
And they can find me on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah.
Excellent. I mean, I'm so glad that we were able to bring this additional perspective to all these people that really need that safe place in corporate. I was just seeing myself when you were describing that. I was seeing myself in that position. I was like, as flashes, all those moments in my life in which I had to just, go into myself and know that, those things were not allowed to be said in public or even to my manager. So this is the reality of what's happening today. So I'm glad that you were able to share that, and I'm sure that we've been able to help a lot of people today. So great. Thank you very much for being with us today, Dawn. And Judy, where can we find you?
You can find me on Walking on the Glass Floor. You can find me on Selling in a Skirt. LinkedIn, I'm Judy Hoberman. All the social platforms, I'm Selling in a Skirt or Judy Hoberman. And just excited every week to bring some amazing people to our listeners and watchers and viewers and whatever. And, And Don is, he's a special guy. He's got a lot of experience, and you just have to get that experience out and let people hear about it, because it really is important. He really has gone through lots of different phases, and so I just think it's important that people hear.
Oh, absolutely.
And how about
today? Yeah, thank you. I mean, I guess as I said before, I mean, for me today, it's been like we have been reviewing different perspectives that we didn't have before. Absolutely. I mean, Don is a powerful man, no doubt about it. And he's actually being led to the stars, not only because of the season and because of the reindeers and because of his tie, but that's the reality. I'm always inspired by him every time that I'm able to ask him a question. So extremely powerful conversation today, and I think we've brought a very, very powerful perspective today to the table to everybody that is in corporate and is unfortunately suffering today, and they have to go through some experiences that will allow them to live in a better place and to have a better life. So thank you again, Don. Thank you very much, Judy. Thank you for being with us today.
Joe, tell everybody where they can find you and wisdom.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. You can find me, as you know, I'm a consultant for companies that want to expand their businesses international, and I'm the president of Wisdom for Kids. And that's why all the time I talk about Latinos, because our Wisdom for Kids Foundation, what we do is we help underprivileged kids in Latin America become entrepreneurs using their local resources. And we very well describes, Don talked about number of generations that Latinos have been in this country. So there's a lot of many different generations that are living in the same corporate world today, and they have different challenges. And so I'm championing all those kids in Latin America to have better opportunities and to live their lives at their full potential. And obviously very sensitive about women and about girls and about their future. So thank you very much, Judy, for reminding me. And again, thank you, Don, for being with us today. The same for Judy. See you next week. And again, this is Angel Rebo with Mindalia TV. Thank you very much for being with us today. I'm sure that you enjoyed this show as much as I did and we did at Mindalia TV, and hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.
Bye.